In Gloucestershire in England earlier this week, a set of traditional competitions took place that are at least 200 years old, but maybe much older. What does the winner get? Some cheese. But there's more than meets the eye in Gloucestershire, because thanks to one of its cows, whose milk makes the famous cheese of Gloucester, a terrible human disease was eradicated. On today's episode of Life's Potluck Buffet, I'm going to talk about that disease, that cheese, and we're going to ask the cards how to get the cheese rolling in our lives. I'm John Paulus. You're listening to Life's Potluck Buffet, only on YouTube. If you've been enjoying Life's Potluck Buffet, please subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. If you have a Brave browser, you can now contribute basic attention tokens to Life's Potluck Buffet with John Paulus on YouTube. Thank you for your support, and thank you for listening. In the world before October 1977, a terrible disease called smallpox haunted the world with deaths and blindness in those who survived. But thanks to a dairy worker named Sarah Nelms, an 8-year-old boy named James Phipps, a country doctor named Edward Jenner, and an old Gloucester cow named Blossom, the world would begin on its path to eliminate the only human disease that has ever been eradicated from the face of the earth, smallpox, and would give a name. And what's so interesting about Jenner's experimentation was that because of the source of the inoculation against smallpox that would be found in this process, the name for inoculating people against any disease would be called, from the scientific name of the strain of cowpox used to prevent smallpox. And the name of cowpox, scientifically, at the time, was variola vaccinae, which means cow blisters. And the variola part is the blisters part, and vaccinae means of cows. And that's where we get the word vaccine and vaccination. And it all started with a cow named Blossom, who had cowpox. And Blossom's cowpox spread to the dairy worker, Sarah Nelms, who developed a cowpox rash with the blisters that cowpox produces. Now, cowpox were known at the time already to be not that dangerous, and also it was known in places around the world already that people who had had cowpox, which was rare and only happened really in contexts where there was in very close contact with humans and cows, like in a dairy, those people who had suffered from cowpox didn't seem to be susceptible to smallpox. Now, remember, this is before the idea of a virus, what a virus was, which variola is, was remotely known. That would come much later, when the filters that were created to filter bacteria out of water, and these filters were made of porcelain, these filters were found to not filter out something that was an infectious agent from the water, something much, much, much smaller than the bacteria that the porcelain filters would catch. So what the infectious agent was, what was known was that people who had been infected purposefully from other people who had blisters that had healed from smallpox that those people would be immune from smallpox. They didn't know it at the time, but the risk there was infecting people with large amounts of a live virus that would affect them in the same way that a person who had caught the virus was affected, sometimes resulted in the problem the variolation, as they called it, was trying to solve. And that type of inoculation was present in every continent in the world, and humans had figured that out a really, really long time ago. But the special thing about Gloucester and the situation there was that even though Jenner didn't know it, the virus that produced cowpox was closely related to the virus that produced smallpox. And so by collecting what we would know later to be cowpox virus from the hands of Sarah Nelms, which had been infected with the cowpox virus that Blossom had, and inoculating using ivory needles the young boy who was the son of his gardener, and the boy's name was James Phipps, that he would be protecting James Phipps for life from contracting smallpox. Phipps got sick, but just had a mild case of cowpox. And when he recovered, Jenner attempted, using the variolation technique of introducing live viruses into the skin of the person who is being inoculated, to test to see if he would react to the introduction of that virus, but nothing happened. And nothing happened when others had the same inoculation. And Jenner tried again later on to see if the people who had been inoculated with cowpox would catch smallpox from the introduction of the smallpox to their bodies, but they never did. And there were no cases of smallpox in any of the individuals that had received vaccination. And the world's trek to ultimately eliminate smallpox began. And it happened in Gloucestershire. And it started with the infection of an old Gloucester cow, the kind of cow that made double Gloucester cheese. We don't know why it's double. There are several reasons that people have given, but none of them have been shown to be the case. But double Gloucester cheese, which is the pride of Gloucestershire, is exactly the kind of cheese that is used in the great cheese chasing race that happens every May in Gloucestershire. And I think it's nice that it happens in the same month that Jenner and Nelms and Phipps and Blossom started humanity on the path to the elimination of smallpox. And the records show for sure that by 1826, the race to chase the wheel of double Gloucester cheese down the famous hill in Gloucestershire, where the race happens every year, Cooper's Hill, had already started in earnest. I wonder if James Phipps or Sarah Nelms ever made it out to the cheese race, or maybe they were even some of the competitors. We can only guess. We know that Phipps lived a into old age in the cottage that Jenner had bequeathed to him for being the first participant in his famous experiments. And while Blossom, the cow, probably wasn't around to see the first cheese race down the hill, I like to imagine that 9-pound wheel of double Gloucester that was rolled down the hill was produced by one of her descendants. And I think there's a good chance it probably was. And so every time you see people tumbling down Cooper's Hill at breakneck speeds, think about that wheel of double Gloucester cheese that they're after, and think of Blossom and Jenner and Nelms and Phipps. Let's ask the cards what we need to think about in our working lives and see what they have to say. Yellow lemons, blue dumplings, magenta noodles. Cards, tell us somethings. It's card 20. Put your oxygen mask on first, then make sure to help others. What's essential advice for an emergency situation in an airplane is good advice for your work, too. Make it a goal to tend to your own security and then tend to the security of others. Think about how you have helped your own stability, and then think about how, in helping your own stability, you've put yourself in the position to then help others. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time on Life's Potluck Buffet.